Hey everybody, Robert Dunt, founder of ArtTop10.com, and here I am outside Tate Britain in London, and I'm just about to nip inside to go and see the press preview of British Baroque, Power and Illusion. So let's go inside and see what happens and see if we can find out what Baroque means. Hey everybody, so Baroque, what does it mean? Not actually that easy to define. I would say sort of overly flamboyant or overtly ornate, flamboyant, something like that. Anyway, I'll have a look at the pictures and I think you'll get a vibe for the sort of wildness they were using. Look at that. So, dressed up in his sort of crazy outfit with a gold throne and a bright blue outfit. It's kind of a little picture in the background with all the things shooting out and the wild horses roaming their heads around. I think that gives you a sense of what the Baroque's meant to be. So, British Baroque, Power and Illusion. So, this exhibition covers the reigns of the last Stuart monarchs, from the restoration of Charles II in 1660 to the death of Queen Anne in 1714. In Europe, it was an age when art was used to support and advertise the authority of the monarchy. While Louis XIV and his court at Versailles provide the leading example of this culture, the focus here is on Britain, a Protestant nation, where the power of the monarch was no longer absolute. And that's quite important about that power of the monarch not being absolute. That's why all these sort of courtiers and people hanging around are all dressing up in their crazy wild outfits and having a wild sort of Baroque madness moment themselves. Look at them, you see everybody's dressing up like a maniac and looking kind of cool. Across the period, major events took place. The restoration of the monarchy in 1660, the revolution of 1688, the consequent central positioning of Parliament, the rise of party politics, the union of England and Scotland, the wars that shaped Britain's role in Europe. It is in this period of change and the journey from the glamorous court-centred world of Charles II to the political climate of the reign of Anne that the association between art and power is explored. The later Stuart period was an age of hierarchy. Displays of magnificence to express status and influence were used by royal courts, aristocrats and the rising political elite. Works of art on a grand scale, the use of illusion and perspective to awe-inspiring effect, and the visual impact of the great buildings of the age, such as St Paul's Cathedral, Chatsworth and Blenheim Palace, were persuasive statements of power. So it's sort of showing off power, showing off your wild, sort of ornate madness sort of thing. But there you go, you can see that picture again. You've got a sort of, it's completely mad, isn't it? All these sort of pink and violet ribbons flowing around, horses shooting out of the sea, and I'm not sure who the king is, but obviously he's like almost in a giant sort of oyster shell popping out of the water as, the magnificent person. But that's the vibe, and it's kind of fun. Okay, so I'm strolling around room 2 now, and this is about the Restoration Court. The restoration of the monarchy returned the royal court to the centre of the nation's cultural life. It was a place of influence and a leader of fashion, and set the standard for levels of magnificence and splendour. Ambitious men and women competed to gain prominent roles in the favour of the king. Artistic patronage and fashion was set by the most important courtiers, and large sums were spent keeping up with court taste. Portraits offered messages about power and status, and their display demonstrated important connections. Peter Lely, the king's painter, was the most sought-after artist. His portraits of court beauties, dressed in expensive silks, capture more than any others the tone of the Restoration Court. While the king and his followers were painted by Lely, the Queen, Catherine Braganza, chose Jacob Huysmans. He provided for her and her mainly fellow Catholic supporters a separate visual identity. So there are the sort of beauties all painted up, all in their sort of gold and blue magnificence. But interesting, isn't it, how relevant the look of you were painted, how important that was to the court. It's almost like you were creating your kind of fantasy existence, and it was important to create a fantasy existence. Maybe that mattered as much as your real one. Maybe your painting, your on show, demonstrated who you were and what you do. Oh, look at that man, it's got a fantastic thing with the main monkey there. I enjoy that bit. Yeah, the monkey bit's freaky. And quite strange here, also having themselves painted as sort of religious people, which I think is quite strange. But I suppose once again that places you in a sort of fantastical fantasy world, as it were. It's intriguing, isn't it, what they would do? And then here, that's just bizarre. What is that sheep doing? And then you've got that sort of a silver dress that looks a bit like sort of silver foil put in the oven. Really weird, but at the same time kind of translucent. I suppose it's one of the things you do miss a bit about the painting, the quality of the painting here, which I suppose is very good because you're a bit lost just in the complete madness of what's going on. And there's another one with another sheep. It's absolutely fantastic. And then what do we get down here? We've got These must be... Ooh, I'm wobbling it a bit there too fast. Oh, this guy's brilliant, isn't he? Look at him. Standing there in his orange and pink outfit with his... He's not even sure he was jabbing his own foot with that cane. But look at him, having a fantastic time saying, look at me, I am amazing. And he's got a fantastic blue bow on his tummy. What more could you possibly want? Okay, so here we go, strolling around room 3. So, the religious interior. The 17th century, religion was a deeply divisive subject. The Civil War had seen the removal of the monarch. In 1662, shortly after Charles II's restoration, the Church of England was re-established with the king as its head. The country had witnessed the destruction of war and Puritan attacks on art in churches. There was a desire to unite the Protestant country and restore cathedrals and churches as suitable settings for worship. A wide range of opinion about the use of images remained. Some feared they would be worshipped instead of God. Others thought biblical narratives and elaborate decoration were appropriate in religious settings. So, I suppose this kind of crazy Barockiness spreads through into the religious painting of the time as well. I mean, that one's, I suppose, one doesn't look too crazy, does it? Apart from the sort of angel in the top left sort of communicating, that looks much more puritanical, I'd have said, that picture. But it's interesting, isn't it? It's the art at this point seems to have been quite important to actually what you were trying to say in the world, which is quite interesting. It shows just how important art can be. Oh, another one of these religious pictures. I mean, these seem all quite normal, don't they? They don't seem too mad, but I guess again it does. Art's important for communicating and for, I guess, like you say, the whole idolatry argument that you shouldn't be worshipping an image of Jesus, you should be worshipping Jesus himself. It's interesting that that's brought up. It's interesting just how important art seemed to be throughout the whole of this period. And there's this. Now this is more Baroque, I would have said. This absolutely bizarre sort of wooden sculpture. Look at all those little leaves and that fantastic bird on the top. I mean, that is really cool. That's a funky piece of wood work. Okay, so this is one of the most fun rooms of the exhibition. The Illusion Deception, room 4. It's much more exciting than the others. So it's got these crazy trompe l'oeil paintings, painted to trick the eye into thinking the objects depicted are real. They were highly fashionable in the late Stuart period. Viewers of these pictures, which were sometimes carefully positioned to enhance the illusion, were delighted by their skillful deception. Such works were collected at the Royal Courts of Europe and in England by Charles II. So look, you've got these fantastic sort of things with these massive sense of space flying down. But now, these are the ones, hopefully I'm going to linger on these, that I like the most. These remind me of kind of Cubist stuff, really. Because look, you've got these brilliant sort of fake letters, fake magnifying glass, all then put under fake pieces of red tape. But it all looks like they're real things. I think that is a brilliant... But it does remind me of sort of, I would say these are early Cubist things. They're all... I don't know why, but I mean, you've sort of got the angles breaking back and forth between them. And there's a sort of, I think Cubism does have a kind of trompe l'oeil thing, tricking your eye to feel you're moving around. I mean, these are very static. They're not got the classic Cubist thing of trying to let you see the world from different angles at once. So it's just from one angle. But it's playing with that sense of how you see things and what reality is, which I think is within Cubism. Look at that one peeling up. Fantastic. Look at it, it's so cool. And then the fake wooden background painted on. And here again, those are superb. I think they're great. This was slightly more confusing to work out what's actually happening, but you could sort of peer down through those little holes at the side and get a sort of, I think, you're meant to get a kind of crazy 3D view. But these are pretty cool, those big ones with that big sort of 3D stretching off into the distance. Beautiful. Look at it, like you're looking through a real sort of fake curved column down that passage. Fantastic stuff. So here we are, strolling around room 5. So this is Wren and Baroque architecture. The late Stuart period was the age of English Baroque architecture. This grand style is particularly associated with the court architect Christopher Wren, Surveyor General of the King's Works. Wren's architectural design was guided by the principles of mathematics and geometry. He looked to classical architecture and was also familiar with contemporary French architecture. He had visited Paris during the London Plague year of 1665-6 and knew Louis XIV building projects through prints. He absorbed French ideas about visual magnificence. He recognised that architecture was a public art with a political use. Wren's impressive buildings expressed magnificence, strength and beauty and were symbols of the nation. Yeah, so obviously you've got quite a bit of this whole architecture thing, which I guess fits in. It's interesting once again just how relevant the art was, or the architecture, to the how they were living. It seems to have a much greater split with these things nowadays. It doesn't seem to have any relationship. It's not like there's a unified art that goes through what we're doing to talk about how we feel. There's just art's completely split asunder and disparate these days, and people doing whatever they want. So it certainly doesn't work in a kind of specifically organised way, does it? And then also the second half of this room goes on to country mansions and courtly gardens. From the late 1680s, Rennes royal palaces and public buildings served as inspiration for country mansions. Grand houses built for wealthy aristocrats, which had once been relatively plain, were made more splendid. The architects John Toulmin, Nicholas Hawksmoor and John Vanbrugh designed buildings lavish in scale, such as Chatsworth House and Blenheim Palace. Rich ornament decorated skylines and the use of the giant order, columns or pilasters the height of the building, increased the sense of scale and gave these grand houses a powerful visual impact. The elaborate gardens of Louis XIV in France and those of William and Mary in the Netherlands influenced those of the English aristocracy. They had ornamental parterres, grass, gravel, and planting in intricate patterns, classic statues, groves crisscrossed with walks, and fountains with impressive jets of water. There were also aviaries with colourful imported birds, as you can see there. Yeah, so the houses are cool. I hadn't realised actually most houses like going around in England are actually these crazy Baroque houses, probably because they do look more fun and wild and interesting. But those birds are absolutely fantastic, aren't they? Completely mad. Well, I guess that's got a nice Baroque vibe to it. Interesting, if you go around Richmond Park now, you can still see green parrots, which were somehow imported into here. But yeah, that's cool. Now look, we're just going to go on for a second, and you'll be able to see some of these houses as we move on from these fantastic birds. It's interesting to actually use the birds as a kind of colour, a bit like flowers. Interesting to think. I never thought of using birds as a kind of method of putting colour, and I think that is Blenheim Palace. I hope I'm not completely wrong. And look, there you go. Now that's a fantastic. I cannot remember what the one is. I think that's probably Chatsworth, but really cool painting, isn't it? Just showing you how they wanted that grandeur and scale and sort of huge vibe to it. Really good fun. And that's what these places are so good to look at, aren't they? They're just mad. Just amazing and mad. Look at that one. Fantastic as well. They're really cool. Good. Excellent. Really enjoyed those. I love all these houses in real life. You should go and look at them if you haven't seen, because they are kind of splendid. So this is room 7, painted interiors. Illusionistic mural painting was an important feature of late Stuart interiors. Ceilings, staircases and walls of palaces, country houses and public buildings were painted with subjects taken from ancient history and classical mythology. They were grand in scale and cost vast sums of money. For months or even years, large areas of houses were given over to scaffolding for teams of artists to work. Just imagine, you had this mad, beautiful house built, and then you fill it with scaffolding so somebody can paint a crazy ceiling. The room begins together sketches by the leading mural artists Antonio Verrio, Louis Laguerre, Louis Chéron, and James Thornhill for large painted schemes. From quick ink drawings to oil sketches presented to clients, they reveal the creative process for these complex spaces. So they obviously aren't the real things, they're massive things in houses, so these are like little sketches, and the sketches are just amazing. Look at that. Call that a sketch, it's absolutely stunning, isn't it? But these are entertaining, aren't they? Once again, flamboyant madness flying around. There's a huge two people flying down there on the left-hand side, and ducks floating up. I mean, it's all just completely crazy, but highly entertaining. Little horse leaping around there. Wow, look at the sky bursting out. Look at it. It's brilliant, isn't it? It is kind of mad, but it's also kind of vibrant and exciting. Oh, look at that. I mean, these are sketches. It's just to inspire clients, but they're beautifully done, aren't they? Yeah, you can see more of these sketches here. It would take ages to produce something like that. Beautiful, they're black and white, just with the tonalities as well. Probably sort of thing where they did do tonal practice beforehand. Look, there's another one. Look at that. Absolutely fantastic. Kind of crazy. I love it how they've used the clouds as like sort of pieces of ground to stand or sit on, like sort of floating hills. Anyway, fantastic things, and they've got that Baroque madness to them, and a sort of beauty and amazement to them. Stunning. So, well worth looking at. So, beauty is this room. Room 8, beauty. In late Stuart society, beauty was considered a valuable quality of women. It was celebrated in poetry and painting to flatter individuals and honour their families. This room brings together examples from two portrait sets of beauties created in the 1960s, Godfrey Kneller's Hampton Court Beauties and Michael Dahl's Petworth Beauties. The Hampton Court Beauties, a set of 8 full-length portraits, was commissioned by Mary II in 1690-1. The chosen women were considered the most beautiful at her court. The set of Petworth Beauties was commissioned by the 6th Duke and Duchess of Somerset for their country mansion, Petworth House, that was being transformed into a magnificent Baroque palace. The sitters represent their family and their connections. They range in age from mid-teens to their 30s. Their portraits present an ideal model of court beauty. The expensive silks, grand settings, and beautiful flowers in the portraits all reflect the beauty and morals of the sitters. The portraits were designed to complement them and express the nobility. So interesting, isn't it? The beauties are almost sort of aiding to justify the people who have these big houses that they deserve to have them. So it's a kind of bizarre thing, isn't it? It's a bizarre thing to think that beauty was almost like a currency, like something that allowed you to have things. Interesting theory, isn't it? Almost like what? Almost like you were on a higher sort of caste or level if you were beautiful. But they must have made sure these people look beautiful in the picture. And there's me standing in the background. They must have made sure these people look beautiful. So, I mean, they must have designed them to look beautiful, to match the house. But it's interesting, isn't it? And these houses would have looked amazing with these pictures lying around on the walls, wouldn't they? As this sort of, it's like this is our cache of beauty. This is our wealth. This is our demonstration of our wealth of beauty. Interesting thing. I suppose you could still say it's similar today with all this sort of crazy Kardashians and people. They're trying to say their beauty or their look is their value as well. So I guess it's nothing new, frankly. And here we are, strolling around room number 9, Triumph and Glory. For almost the entire reigns of William III and Anne, 1689 to 1714, Britain was at war. The 9 Years' War, 1688 to 97, and the War of the Spanish Succession, 1701 to 13, dominated the times. Britain was part of the Grand Alliance with the Dutch Republic, Holy Roman Empire, Spain, and Savoy. They were engaged in battle against French dominance in Europe. Images of the monarch represented not just their own authority, but also the might of the nation. The magnificent portraits, battle scenes, and commemorative medals of the French king Louis XIV were leading examples of how to glorify supreme power and victory. They were models that were imitated by other European leaders. Equestrian images of William III and battle scenes showing him victorious before his troops reinforced ideas about his and Britain's strength. They were collected and displayed by the king's supporters. Medals were circulated that promoted his power while mocking that of Louis XIV. As a female monarch, Queen Anne's image was used to promote peace. It's rather nice. So you got all these crazy warmongering images, and then hers was used to promote peace, which in some ways slightly more sane. I find it insane that people are still so obsessed with war. Why? What in the world for? Especially as half those people are sitting there on the horse in the background. These ones, probably like that guy, standing there in the background watching other people getting killed. And what do they think? They think they're wonderful while that takes place. It seems a bit sickly, if you ask me. Look, there they are, up on the hill. Other people are getting shot, and they're just prancing around saying, "Oh, look, we've organised it all. Aren't we special?" So I don't find that really redolent of power or genius, just of sort of misery and unfairness. Are we going to get the same vibe in this one? Sort of, yeah. Even further away from the battle by the look of this one. There they are, prancing around, while the battle goes on in the background. Completely insane. They should, realise that they wouldn't really very much enjoy being down there in the middle of that battle. Anyway, Triumph and Glory, I suppose that leads into part of this sort of flamboyant thing, even though I can't emotionally connect with that in any way at all. Right, so, room 10, the age of politics. The revolution of 1688-9 limited royal power. This is important because, ironically, when royal power is limited, everything becomes more normal and it's not so baroque or fun anymore. It's kind of tedious. Parliament became central to the political life of the nation. It was the age of the rise of political parties. While the Whigs opposed absolute monarchy and Catholic influence and supported the Protestant succession, the Tories were the party that identified with the traditions of Stuart rule. In Queen Anne's reign, 1702 to 14, the power, influence and cultural leadership of the royal court faced increasing competition from wealthy aristocrats and the new political elite. Belief in magnificent display to express power and status continued. Godfrey Kneller, principal painter to successive monarchs, was the leading portrait painter. He produced full-length images that aimed to present his cities as noble and dignified, as well as courtiers and leading aristocrats and patrons, including wealthy professionals and politicians. But once the politicians take over, it all gets a bit more boring, basically, doesn't it? I mean, you can have many questions about monarchy and what they should or shouldn't be doing, and they shouldn't be there, but I guess because they don't really have any, well, to a degree, well, I suppose they did have responsibility then, but they also have a chance to be completely mad and just go around doing what they want. Well, the politicians are all more serious. I guess if you're put there by God, if you're born into the situation, you can just go completely mad and do what you want. Whereas if you fought and worked hard for it, then you have to be serious and sensible. So, yeah, there's the irony thing that the royals had more fun and made more crazy Baroque stuff than afterwards. It's interesting they still do get big portraits of the Queen and things like that, don't they? So it does still matter. It still matters that there are portraits done of these people. Whether that's a hangover from then or that's something that's always been relevant with the monarchy, I'm not entirely sure, but it's probably always been relevant. But it shows once again how art does stamp something. And I think that's probably the most interesting thing about this exhibition, is that art played a key part in defining the Baroque era, which you don't really get anymore, because our art's all disparate and splurged and broken to pieces now. But then it was more unified, and everybody was pounding in the same direction, which would have been quite an interesting place to be, because you could have a defined of who is good or bad, whereas nowadays we just haven't got a clue. Anyway, it's an interesting exhibition, and I hope you enjoy watching it here. As ever, please like and subscribe. If you can donate, that would be amazing, as Art Top 10 is self-funded. Okay, thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bomba